end of a period of collaboration. So let's say that the EU is no stranger to open source software. In December 2000, the European Commission defined a strategy concerning the internal use of open source software that created the context for the recognition and use of the Apache web server as recommended solution on Unix system. And in 2011, when the Commission adopted the open source strategy for the first time, at the beginning only for the period 2011 and 2013, and later for other periods that are being renewed every few years. And then with the Tallinn Declaration on e-government of 2017, when the EU ministers agreed that using open source solutions and open standards helps to avoid IT vendor lock-in. What can be observed is that the EU offers supports and incentives for the adoption, development, and promotion of open source software. But it is also us, the various stakeholders, that have to contribute to this. There are, of course, many areas where open source software is being used, but how is it in the education sector? The European Framework for Digital Competence for Educators, known also as DigComp Edu, describes what it means for educators to be digitally competent and provides a general reference frame to support the development of educator-specific digital competences in Europe. It details 22 competencies, and among them, organizing, sharing, publishing, creating, and modifying digital resources, actively engaging learners through digital tools, facilitating learners' digital competence, and so on. All these competencies can be easily acquired through open source technologies. When a technology is referred to as open source, it means that people can modify and share the code because its design is publicly accessible. These technologies combine the free availability of technical artifacts and information with powerful community-based development and maintenance. They change the way we learn by fostering online communities, by enabling personalized learning experiences, by supporting the development of soft skills such as problem solving, collaboration, and creativity, and by making learning fun. Open education has the potential to make the educational system more innovative and, more innovative and efficient, and allows individuals to engage in new and more flexible ways of lifelong learning. These two components made of the integration of open education into EU communication, opening up education, and the renewed priorities of ET 2020 to provide, quote, open and innovative education and training, including by fully embracing the digital era, end of quote. Furthermore, open source technology were supported with the Digital Action Plan 2018-2020 to promote accessibility in education. In this context, the OpenAE project pursues to promote open source technology in non-formal adult education to support the digital upskilling of both educators and learners. Its aim is to build capacity of non-formal training organizations, such as digital competence centers, to deliver high quality and relevant digital skills training to adults by improving staff competence on open source technology. The full name of the project, which is OpenAE Promote Open Source Technology in Non-Formal Adult Education, is an Erasmus Plus KA2 project awarded through EPOS, the National Agencies for Erasmus Plus program in the Flanders, and aims to, one, contribute to the development of educators' competencies to deliver high quality and relevant digital skills training to adults, and two, contribute to the promotion of open source technology and open education in non-formal education. Borut mentioned earlier on all the 5 partners, so Max, Centro Studi Città di Foligno, Collected, Y-Internet, and us, of course. So all the project partners addressed key challenges and reached out to the All Digital Network beyond to develop a sustainable curriculum for educators. particularly with a focus to upscale low skills unemployed adults. The partnership produced and tested essential tools, namely the Trainer Skill Toolkit and the OpenAI online platform that will contribute to the development of educators' competencies across Europe to deliver high quality and relevant digital skills training to adults. With this, OpenAI represents an important contribution to all digital strategic goals. I am convinced that project results that you will learn more about during the event will contribute also to the development of the European Digital Competence Framework 2.2 and other initiatives outlined in the recently adopted Digital Education Action Plan 2021-2027. Even though the project will finish in 2 weeks' time, I would like to use this opportunity to thank and congratulate our project partners for the hard work and the valuable project results. To you, dear participants, a big thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us at this event, and I wish you a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Renato. Now we are moving to the first part, to the second item on the agenda, the panel debate. The panel will be moderated by Leonor Afonso from Whitenet Foundation. And Leonor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Barut. Just as setting the mood of the panel, this panel will be composed by mainly two parts. The first part will be a round of keynote speeches in 10 minutes, so each speaker will have around 10 minutes to explain their ideas regarding this topic that you mentioned. And I will start by presenting Véronique Guizan. She's the director of the Atelier du Web de Saint-Gilles and a digital public space. And Véronique will make an introduction on the Atelier and the uses of free software in this model of the digital public space. Then she will give the floor to Lauriane, who will quickly present the Cabane d'Ibac network. So Véronique, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I present the state of FLOSS in Brussels digital space, public space. In Brussels, several digital space have opted for the use of FLOSS. The idea is to demystify IT. Free software, you know that, give us the opportunity to make IT accessible to many people as possible. IT is very little taught in school in Brussels, and that is a problem for IT use. And in our digital public space, we reach all audience. We meet many people, different people, children, young people, unemployed, homeless, schools, and it is a responsibility for the public digital space to develop a culture based on the appropriation of an understanding of digital technology, in particular to give them a free tool accessible to the greatest number of people, taught the implementation of popular and responsible digital education. That is our work. We meet many people, and the idea is the implementation of Linux in the head of people. For the most reticent user, the free of the license is a good argument, you know that. And we compare the Linux, the FLOSS software means the proprietary software. We have in Atelier du Web. It's a very big space. We have 3 places with 45 computers, 3 rooms, and we have many people. 3,000 people per year is very many people, and we use dual boot PC for basic computer training courses, and free software in all their courses. In 45 computers installed in the 3 rooms on our space, free software are used instead of proprietary software, and we teach for public to use free software such as Open Office, Firefox, GIMP, instead of Microsoft Office Edge and Adobe. We open the Atelier du Web. We created the Atelier du Web since 2006, and we were open since 40 years. And we have a Linux space with Night PC. It's we install Linux Mint. It's freely available to the public, around 3,000 users per year. I say that. Also, we have implemented several workshops to recognize second-hand computer, recondition second-hand computer, and encourage beginners to discover Linux. Several training courses of coding with free software for children, teenagers, and adults, and also about 10 training courses on Linux. And also we made a free software discovery workshop, has been run every week since 10 years. And it's a volunteer guy who comes in to explain and install free software and use PC. That are the different activity. Also, we use to introduce free software to the public in the Atelier du Web. You can see the photos of the Atelier du Web. We have also a website, but it's in French now, not in English, sorry. I work too with Lauriane, who is he can explain you the network of digital public space. We have a very big network in Brussels, and Lauriane manage that very good. Okay, c'est à toi.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. So I'm Lauriane, and I'm working for Caban, which is the network of public digital spaces in Brussels. So in our network, we also have a non-profit organization that work in the field of digital inclusion. So, for example, some of them collect second-hand computers, fix them, and sell them for a very low cost to the public. And we also have non-profit that work in literacy, education for adults, but they also do some digital inclusion. So I'm going to just do a brief history so you can see what I'm talking about. So there was a lack of structuration among the digital inclusion field. So 4 nonprofits gathered to discuss the creation of a network and help organizing the sector. So one of them was the Atelier du Web. And since 2008, the network accomplished several things. So for example, the networking of all the places offering access to IT in Brussels, developing common communication, a database of all the places fighting against digital divide. So today we have a map of digital inclusion on our website, but maybe I can show you very quickly. So sorry. So here you can see all the organizations that are registered on our website. There are about 30 organizations. So we have the map, and here people can just do a quick research. Sorry, it's in French, about the services they want. Okay, and so we also have a common code of conduct that all the organization in our network sign. This code of conduct helps to harmonize the good practices among this sector. And one of the aspects of good practices is promoting free software and promoting Linux, because our values aren't to to promote proprietary softwares and big companies that are not very transparent, etc. We all know the problems. So we try inside our network to promote free software because it adheres to our value. And so other achievements are also the creation of a label for the digital public spaces that guarantees their quality. 18 of them have that label. And we are also passing various information inside our network. For example, call for project, work offers, etc. And we have one point of contact for all the actors of Brussels digital inclusion. And finally, we are promoting the social reality of the sector to the public authorities. In some political discussion, we can share the point of view of non-profit that work in the field. So that's all for Caban.
Veronique and Lauriane. We will move now to present Francesc Ramla. He works in the Center of Telecommunications and Technologies of Information as a consultant. Francesc has been working as a consultant in ICT for more than 25 years, both in public and private companies. Since 2005, he has been working for the government of Catalonia by developing projects in educational technologies and FLOSS. He has combined his activities with teaching in university and vocational training. He's also the author of a book for children called The Mystery of Turtles, which I am very curious about, Francesc. And he published his book in 2007. Please, Francesc, tell us a little bit about what you came today to talk about.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Leonor, for your kind introduction. Sadly, the book is only available in Catalan, but if you learn Catalan, then you can read it. I think it's a good experience to write a book. It's not a good economic experience nowadays, but it's nice. Before starting, I want to thank also the organization for inviting me to this panel, and it's an honor to share it with all the panelists. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. As Leonor has explained when she was introducing me, I've been working for the government of Catalonia during the last 15 years. And in this time, when I was hired in 2005, the first project I was asked to do was to design a model of telecenter that it runs only with free software. When people of All Digital and of the organization, they proposed to me to explain a case of use of flows in real life, a case that has impact on non-formal education, I thought that flows in Xarxa.tic would be the one, and that is. So I will start with this question: what is Xarxa.tic? Xarxa is the Catalan word for network, and .tic means ICT point in Catalan. And it's how we have named telecenters in Catalonia. So La Xarxa.tic is a network of telecenters in Catalonia. Currently, it's formed by more than 500 centers that provide support and training in digital competences to citizenship around the territory. As you can see, they are spread around the territory, literally. And what makes the difference of our network with others is that most of these centers are not owned by Generalitat de Catalunya, like the government, but they are owned by municipalities mainly and also by non-profit organizations. So it is a network because it works as a network, and GenCat provides some resources to help this to work everything as it. This kind of resources, hardware, software, but mainly training methodology. And well, that's the more important point. Obviously, the second question should be what is FLOSS. I know you, all of you know that, but it's important for my presentation to make emphasis to focus in some of these freedoms. It's important to understand that the name is changing. We talked about free software some years ago, open source software, and well, FLOSS is the term that gives a word for all the forms of open source software. But all of them share these four freedoms, and I want you to focus in the two last freedoms, the freedom to share and the freedom to improve. That's especially important, and we'll see later, because the ability to improve and share these improvements publicly is what it makes open source so important as software, but also open license is so important for knowledge. So let's talk about FLOSS in xarxa Quantic. As my previous panelist was explaining in her speech, this is a project that has many years, 16 years old. We started introducing free software tutorial centers in 2004. But at this moment, my operating system already was Microsoft Windows. We were deploying pieces of software over Microsoft Windows, and we offered a dual boot option that obviously was not the default one. In 2006, we tested the first version of a FLOSS-only tutorial center model, and during 18 months, we refined this model. With the slight differences, it was used in 2008 and lately in 2010 deployments. But up to 2008, this FLOSS model was deployed only to new centers. And that's important to point this if you are thinking in using open source in the future, because it's quite different changing what you already have that deploying a new equipment with a new software. That's what we faced in 2010. We faced the need to convert existing centers, and to make it easier for us, we made them apply for that. So we didn't force them to migrate to open source, but we suggest them to make a proposal, to make to develop a project, and we offered them a new hardware with FLOSS installed in. Lately, in 2014, Microsoft came to help us, surprisingly, because if you remember, they ended the extended support for Windows XP, and the remaining centers in our network were required to switch to FLOSS. Not having support was definitely the solution for migrating. The history more or less ends in 2006 and continues. Then we upgraded all the hardware in our centers, and all of them are nowadays working in a FLOSS based model. What we have learned during these years, during this travel, the first thing we fastly discovered is that reticence to change. When remember the history, when you are changing something that you already had, but that resistance exists, and you have to manage it, and it's the key point when you're changing something. No? And here the support and training is the key point. The second learning is that if it's possible, it is much better to upgrade, to transmit that you're upgrading than not to migrate. So if you are going to deploy open source software or a FLOSS solution, and it comes with new hardware, it will be more welcome than if it doesn't. And finally, and well, this is not very encouraging, but the fact is that nowadays we are realizing that the software running in our computers is becoming quite relevant because of cloud computing. So what we have seen is that there's almost no difference at what you can do in a FLOSS-based solution versus a proprietary solution. Probably we should have started by this point. Why FLOSS? As Leonor has told you when she was introducing me, I've been teaching in a university for some years, and I was precisely teaching in the subject of the open source in the public sector in postgraduate studies in the Open University of Catalonia. These reasons was the core of one of the studies that we are teaching. So why do you use FLOSS in our network? Obviously, by using FLOSS, you are not required to pay a license, and this provides some savings. Not always very big, but some savings, yes. On the other hand, open source software developers want you to use its software because it is good and free. So they do not need to retain you captive in their technology. That's also why open source used to better comply with open standards. And that's also why FLOSS used to perform better than non-FLOSS in cheaper and older software. So it provides better interoperability and avoids this lock-in. It was referring Renato Sabadini in his welcome. We have seen that the freedom of modificating it comes standard with FLOSS. And given that translating and localizing a piece of software is a form of modification improvement, you just can do it. It comes standard. The problem here is that in most cases, you don't know how. And local companies in the digital area are your answer. They will help you with that, and you will boost them. So using open source is also a form of boosting local digital industry. And last but not least, it is easy to see that the cheaper software, it is free, we have seen it's free, that works in cheaper hardware that can be localized and translated into the main language of citizens. Well, all that barriers that you can find that difficult citizens to get to the digital world, they almost magically disappear or are easier to avoid if you're using FLOSS. So that it will be a help to avoid digital division. So I think I'm out of time, but just I want to point to remember that two freedoms I was focusing in my previous slide. I want to remark that the most important learning of FLOSS is that by sharing, improving, and then resharing these improved versions, we got better software. But why can't we apply this same cycle to other kinds of creation? By using free licenses, we are settling the base for co-creation and social innovations. Thank you very much.
Francesca, you raised excellent questions that we hope to discuss a little bit further as we move to the second part of our panel discussion. But now I would like to present Frédéric Collignon. He works in Brussels Linux User Group and is a member of association Belt Association to Promotion of Open Free Software. He has actively participated in the focus groups and trainings of this project, and he hosts a radio show on the campus and on the notion of the Libre. For those who want to know the reference, it's 92.1 FM. And Source is a bi-monthly program on the general notion of the Libre, the free software in different perspectives, whether it's in computer or social or cultural. He is strongly involved and networks with those promoting FLOSS in Belgium and Brussels, specifically in Brussels. For example, in the association, Belgian Association Promotion of Open and Free Software. Frédéric, please, the floor is yours.
Do you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we hear you, but with a lot of interference. Yes, we hear you, but with a lot of interference. Can you hear us?
Yes, okay, great. Yes, indeed, I'm a defender of the non-profit digital tools. FLOSS is free, legal, but also free is confusing because no money and because it leaves the user free as
Francesca, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are having a lot of troubles to hear you.
I'm very sorry, the interconnection is very bad on my side. It's difficult knowing. You hear me better?
No, we cannot understand. We cannot understand saying. So I'm sorry. I'm going to try to invite you to try to figure out a new way of connecting to this call. And while you do that, I will pass directly to Luca. And maybe after Luca, if you already have your system set, we come back to you. Is that okay for you? Okay, I cannot hear you, so I'm going to move directly to Luca. So now it's my great honor to present Luca, Luca Pagliarici. I hope I said your name okay, Pagliarici. Luca is working on project OpenAI since the beginning. He works at Centro Studi Città di Foligno. He's a project manager and a consultant. He has a very interesting life path. He holds a master in modern languages and literature, and which along his professional and educational experience abroad, like in Australia, Belgium, and France, permitted him to develop an excellent set of digital skills. He's always keen to work in an international environment. In the last 2 years, he's been orienting his professional career towards the IT field and EU funding opportunities. He's currently working as a consultant and he's a project manager on Erasmus+.
Thanks for the introduction, Leonor, and I'm very glad to take part in this panel on behalf of the OpenAI project. So I'm also representing here my colleagues from the OpenAI consortium. As Leonor just said, I've been working on digital skills development projects in the last years with a special focus on social and e-inclusion. What I would like to share with you today, I don't have a presentation. I would just like to draw from the OpenAI experience and just to try to make a link with what has been said by other speakers before me. And I would like to focus on one specific aspect of the FLOSS and how it relates with the OpenAI project and with adult education non-formal adult education. And this specific topic is the competence and skills development. Why is that? As Renato Sabadini has introduced, we started from a European framework and the DigiComp Edu framework. And what we observe in these 2 years of work is that the FLOSS approach, the FLOSS culture, is very much in support of competence development. Just a very quick introduction. When we, for the OpenAI project at least, when we talk about the FLOSS culture, we worked on 2 areas. So FLOSS as open and free software, so software developed software. And the other area was OER, so open educational resources, not specifically software, but how, for example, the development model of software can also be applied to other areas. How can we, the educational communities, build together educational resources? So starting from there, what we observe with OpenAI, that the question is not just what you learn to use and what to use, but it's also how to use and how you learn. And as I think Francesc really nicely pointed out, is that exactly there. And the 2 freedoms he highlighted, which is share and improve, are exactly related to that. And if we consider like 2 key competencies that are also part of the main frameworks that European Commission has developed, not only DigiComp Edu, but if we look at the DigiComp, if you look at the EnterComp and the LiveComp, these 2 key competencies that are not strictly related to the digital world, but they are just transversal competencies, which are the learning to learn and learning by doing competence, is something that the FLOSS culture and the FLOSS approach can really help supporting. And so what we observed that for organization and educators, but because those were our target groups for the OpenAI projects, these 2 competencies can be very much developed thanks to the FLOSS approach. And we witnessed that directly in the OpenAI, at least my colleagues in the second session will tell you more about the experience of the piloting. But for the piloting in Foligno in Italy, this is something we really touch with them, because when it's learning by doing and you push people like to be part of a community and working together to build something, whether it's a software or it might be a guide, or it might be a presentation quiz for a course, it's this is very, the learning by doing competence is very much like supported by this community approach. And the same is for the learning to learn competence. Of course, it's one thing, as I said before, one thing is what you learn and what you use is using a product that is given by a software company to you, and you just learn how to use it. I mean, that's not the product you use. One thing is to what extent you're aware of what you're using, and how you're using that, and how you can contribute to the growth of this and development of this tool. So this, I think, crucial difference between what you learn and how to learn is what makes the difference, and what the FLOSS culture is really helping. I think it can really help the educational community in the following years. As Renato Sabadini mentioned, the European Commission has done something already in this sense. Something more can be, of course, can be done. And if we look in perspective, not in the short term maybe, but in the long term, what is very interesting that for organization, and we focus for the OpenAI on, of course, training providers. So for training providers and educators, adopting the FLOSS approach, so joining the FLOSS culture will be very much beneficial for both them and the organization. Why is that? Of course, because if you use a product, you use one product, that's all, and you stop there. If you are part, or you're willing to take part in a community and taking part in the development, of course, is something else. It means responding better to the needs of the community. It means customizing the tools, software, or educational resources according to what you need for your activities. So the return on investment Francesc has mentioned the economic point of view, some savings, but we think from the competence development point of view, the return on investment is exactly there. In maybe not, as I said, in 2 years, but maybe in 5, in 10 years, this competence development will can bring organization and educators really to respond better to learners' needs and improve the quality of the education. Of course, during the OpenAI, these 2 years work, we stopped to the adult education sector, but the model we developed and what we observe from the FLOSS culture is something that can be easily transferable. And we talk a lot about, the public sector and other contexts. So it's something that we think is valuable for the whole community beyond the educational world. And just, to conclude and take on where we started from the DigiComp framework, the Commission is working on it, and maybe it's the competence framework. We believe that this connection with the FLOSS culture and the FLOSS approach should be made like even clearer in the next version of the framework, because the digital competencies as they are described, well-defined and designed in the DigiComp can be fully exploited with the FLOSS approach. So we believe this is something we really should focus on for the next years. So that's something I think we learned from the OpenAI experience for these 2 years. And yes, I think it's very much connected with what Francesc and Vero have said before. So yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna ask Frederick if he already has a new mobile or a new way to connect. Okay, I see that Frederick is not ready yet.
Not yet, but I'm trying to close all program of my computer to keep only Zoom because he's very greedy. Do you hear me better?
Much better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as I said on the chat, there is the visualcapitalist.com, which is very interesting for proposing.
I'm sorry, Frederick, but I'm sorry, but it's worse again. So maybe we will move on to the debate. And for the second part of this panel, I'm gonna invite you speakers to share some ideas and some visions on a few topics that you already approached. Mainly, what are the main challenges and opportunities you see in the free and open culture movement in specific areas like, for instance, education or training with open educational resources and open platforms?
I can start on that if you like. I think that something that I observed also with my colleagues when it comes to discussing about the open source and the FLOSS, that sometimes it seems to be like a bias about the whole movement, and especially like the software, and that there is not that deep knowledge about them. So the first approach they have, okay, that's open source. They think is free, first of all, and whether it might be true or not sometimes, but also like they think, okay, it's free and it's not good quality. That's, I think, one of the challenge of the movement, that people as this, at least if they're kind of outsider to the FLOSS movement, they have this kind of approach, which sometimes is counterproductive. So I think where we should focus, where the FLOSS culture and the FLOSS movement should focus, is try and change this kind of cultural barrier that is standing between the users and the FLOSS tools.
Would you like to add something?
Yes. Well, I think it's not so important software, and the license is important because it provides you this ability to improve things. But if we're talking about education and especially in digital competences, we have to ensure that citizens, that students are competent using any kind of technology, and they're using a variety of technologies, and using both primitive and closed software is important. But where it's important, the license is in this this cycle of co-creation that enables the flows movement, and that's important because creating knowledge is quite expensive and it's difficult, and doing collectively is easier and drives to better results. So if you ensure that this knowledge is going to remain collective, nobody is going to appropriate of it, contributions are easier.
And I see you open your camera, so do you have something you'd like to add? Your mic is off.
Oh, okay. No, I was just wondering, from the point of view of a nonprofit that work in digital inclusion, sometimes it's not that easy to promote FLOSS and, for example, Linux to people. One very good argument, as Veronique said, is the price, and it's almost the main argument, but they don't always understand things like the transparency and how the big companies, they use data, and how it's not the case in FLOSS culture and with FLOSS tools. So how can we find good arguments for people to understand the importance of those kind of things for us to promote those tools?
That is indeed a good question. Guys, do you have any response?
I mean, I think that sometimes like we may like bring into discussion very good arguments, but of course there is on one side, it seems to be like an unfair, like not a fight, but you know, unfair like confrontation, because once the user is given like for free such effective and nice tools already there from like a proprietary software company, I mean, even though it's not like a software like tool, and so people, at least part of the people, would always go for the easiest way, which is, you know, just to get what is there for free. So what might be useful is to find like nice argument, like, yeah, the price is a good one. It's usually very effective. Yeah, I agree on that, because you say like that's for free and it's very like good quality. Also, yeah, this, and just try, you know, to promote it, and this fact of the collective knowledge and this collective approach as an added value, and try like to make to peopleize this thing as the difference, which, you know, that makes you have like control over the what you're using, what you're accessing.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to add, well, you have more questions, or I just want to add that nowadays price is becoming less important because devices used to access to technology used to bring an operating system inside that that you're not paying for, basically because it is based on open source solutions. So both iOS or Android are based on open source operating systems, and the only big OS that it's fully private is Windows, and we'll see if it lasts for many times, because it starts to sound that it may move to a Linux kernel. But what I want to focus that the price argument, it's losing weight nowadays because of that. When you buy a device, it is deployed with the software. Great part of it is free software. But you are not aware that you're paying for it. It is different in a big company or in a government, what we pay subscriptions for things like Microsoft Office or things like that. No? But in the individuals are getting used to buying all-in-one devices. So I think that's quite different from 10 years ago.
Yeah, the impression I have, actually, I don't know if this in Barcelona, like the feeling are different in Italy. When I look at the educational sector, especially, which is mainly of the people I work with, teachers, educators, like kind of average like users, so not the skill, and they're given, for example, the chance to use the Google Drive as a tool for storing the documents, and on the other side, Nextcloud, which is either you have skills good enough, to install it on your server, or you just, need to pay for the hosting. And then, of course, if you don't have the skills, you are an average user, you will go like for the free. It's not like it's not about price, but the fact that you get everything easy and for free on the other side. So of course, Nextcloud is not that expensive, but yeah, it's at least in Italy what I feel that most in the educational sector, that's the situation for now.
Yes, this preoccupation exists also here in Catalonia, but I share with you that it's not a matter of price. It's a matter of privacy or not giving all your information to some companies. More than the question of price. The fact is that many times you have to pay for using open source solutions there. So it becomes the contrary situation.
Has raised a very good question. I think it was Francesco who mentioned something like in the lines along of licenses being more important than the platforms itself or the softwares we use, and that the process of sharing and reusing content already created promotes development. Would you like to expand a little more on this idea? Because it might be a second argument, maybe in your perspective, a little bit heavier than the money or the price we spend with proprietary software.
Yes, well, probably I'm repeating, but the idea here is that when you contribute to a FLOSS project, I don't like the word FLOSS because it includes software, and we are talking about a kind of culture. So free culture is more. I feel more comfortable with this concept or open knowledge. When you contribute to an open project, you feel secure that this contribution will remain open, and that gives you you feel more comfortable with that contribution and helps people to contribute. The problem obviously is to get a big community, because to produce something like Wikipedia, you need a very big community, and to produce big pieces of software like Linux or LibreOffice, GIMP, you need big communities. It's the same everywhere, but also in small contributions, this cycle of continuously improving things is the license helps to warrant all the participants that what they are doing will remain. Not sure if it is understood, but
Yes, it's very clear. Someone else would like to add something?
Maybe I was just having a look to the chat, and I think from Esther, it was like she expanded a little bit of this thing of the price. As she said, of course, you don't pay for it, but you're paying like in some other way. So I think this is also yeah, this is also true, and yeah.
Yeah, but for people who live in poverty and who don't have a lot of notion about IT, and let's not speak about privacy online and how to manage data, because for people who live in poverty and who know nothing about computers, they don't care about these issues, and all they want is something easy to use. And often free softwares, as they are free, are a good solution for these people. But when we don't want to use only the argument of price, we like to use other arguments to convince them about the tools to use to access IT. Do we really want these people to use proprietary softwares that are going to spy on them when they have so little notions about how to protect themselves? So I was just wondering if you had some very practical arguments for these people. It's not always easy to convince these people who know nothing about IT that free is the best way to go, because they know nothing about the difference between free and proprietary softwares. So
I believe Thanasis wanted to add something.
Yes, I did. It's partly responding to what Loriana said, and I would like just to complete what Luca and Francesco were saying before. I think what happens with Fred and the way that our platform excludes someone with low tech, let's say, to be part of the discussion is a good example of how free and open source software solutions, but the culture in general should evolve, and what we should try to understand and how this is important. So what Lorian is saying for low-income people that don't understand right now, or that don't have the capacity to participate in things, I think the example of Fred is important to analyze and understand. By using a platform that we knew it, that it's let's say a closed platform that asks for a lot of resources, what we are doing is that we are punishing people that don't have this crazy capacity of both on CPUs, on computers, on bandwidth, and so on and so forth. So we're living in societies where we are living this kind of abundance of resources, and then we fail to grasp the ecology part of IT, where low technologies could be a solution in the future for much more respectful environmental solutions and behaviors. So there are different things on this. The first part that we should remember is that if we want to be in the future ecological and respectful of the environment, then we need to go for low-tech technologies that are mostly based on open licenses and open source hardware and software to be formed. And for the time being, when we be using costly and proprietary solutions like formats that proprietary and or platforms that are very greedy in power and resources, then we will have a phenomenon of exclusion, like the one of Fred not being able, let's say, to participate today, or like others that cannot open a certain format of a document because it's in a specific closed format, and others cannot read it or edit it because they don't have the right, let's say, software to do that. So just this to understand that the culture is the most important, but we shouldn't forget that there is a clear materiality in all these things that have an impact to people, and that should be very clearly stated, particularly to politicians and people taking decisions at this level. Thank you.
Esther, expand your comment. Just writing in the chat. Great. have a question from Frederick, and it's a provocative question, I must say. So Frederick is asking why, if we are talking about FLOSS, why are we using DocSheets, documents, and a Zoom invitation? And just very briefly, I would like to say that we discussed this as a partnership, as a consortium, and we decided to go through these formats because it's the formats that people are the most used to. And even though this is an awareness session, it's still an awareness session. So our goal is that having this first go on these kinds of software and files, the next ones will be in different formats. But it was something that we discussed and it was a group decision. I hope this answer is okay for you, Frederick. Does someone have, okay, Esther, go ahead.
That's because we are also in transition. I mean, we are not perfect. That was very, very polemic into the consortium, as some of us are fully on, on Linux and free software tools but not everybody. So the consortium is a little bit, we have a lot of variety and we are trying to move flows. So we are really, really on that. That's the main idea, is not to do the things by heart, but make a slow and slight transition. That would be my assessment for Laurian, who has asked for an advice. That's what we tell people here, is that take it easy, start by using one tool, then two, then three, then you're involved in the FLOSS culture.
Yes, I want also to point that thanks to the open source movement, big companies as Microsoft moved to open standards, and they are now, from it's maybe 12 or 13 years ago, they published as an open standard the format of their Office suite, and now many developers can produce software that integrate with Microsoft Office thanks to that, and that goes because of the pressure of the open source movement. So we have changed things also, and well, using these products maybe a requirement in the government of Catalonia. The official suite is Microsoft Office, but I'm working in Linux for 15 years, and I have some solutions on the Office LibreOffice that can work with that format thanks to that.
Great, we move forward. So we already discussed some of the difficulties that we are experiencing in this field. But for you personally, for each of you, what are the main difficulties we are facing right now with the FLOSS and training community?
I've pointed in my presentation one of the main difficulties, and it's the irrelevancy of software, of the desktop software. So things are moving to the cloud, and many times you don't know what you are using at all, and who is behind these tools. So this is something that has changed a lot in this last 10 years, and that has made that many times the FLOSS debate has been removed from the table of the politicians, and we are not talking. The fact is that I was in conferences like this almost twice or three times every year 10 years ago, and is the first conference talking about FLOSS in 5 or 6 years for me. So I have to say that debate is not so fashion as it used to be.
Luca?
I think that for the, I mean, the educational communities, what we witness also during the piloting in Foligno is that their knowledge about the open source, about the FLOSS is left to their own curiosity. There is not really a systemic approach from, let's say, from educational bodies, from organization and policymaker. So that's the knowledge they have about, for example, LibreOffice, is that because they are curious, so they want to use other tools, not because their organization is providing them with these tools. So I think there's a lack of awareness and a kind of systemic approach to this matter in order like to fully promote the use of the FLOSS.
Question from the chat. What percentage of Microsoft softwares is source code open? I don't know if any of you have any idea on this.
Yes, we have. I mean, the actual tendency is that Microsoft now is one of the main contributors for open source projects in Git. It is the repository, let's say, that resembles, reassembles one of the many projects on open source from different corporations and different kinds of communities. So Microsoft is investing in, and not only Microsoft, I mean, Google, Apple have for long years been investing in open source projects and open source, let's say, methods of developing software and project and using the software. When we say open source, we need to understand what Francesco was saying before. We understand the license that goes behind. So open source comes normally with licenses that allow big corporations and companies to reappropriate this software with a closed proprietary license after, or two in parallel. Apple, Google, and Microsoft have done that now this systematically, so they can have at once an open source project open for community to reuse and to work upon, and then they can at one point reframe this solution and repackage it and republish it under the proprietary license. That's why we have various versions of Microsoft products, of Apple products, of Android, and so on and so forth. So we are not someone to say that we should do only this on this. That is not the idea of the consortium, but the idea of the consortium was to actually push this culture that goes beyond software itself and goes to open education, goes to open licenses, and see how it transforms, let's say, day-to-day practices in our own institutions. So we're going to much wider, let's say, approach on the free culture, like we were saying it during the project. We want to say that free means that also we have place for people to participate, that we understand also gender issues, that we understand also the people that have low income or the disadvantaged, and we create an environment for all of them to take place in this kind of discussion. Having said this, FLOSS is not, or has not always been a paradigm of inclusion and openness. FLOSS communities have always sometimes been also exclusive, have been excluding other, let's say, participants in the future. That's why nobody can actually say that they're out without contradictions. Everybody has kind of contradictions to improve and to let's say, to understand better. So just to summarize, yes, open source is now the main model for developing software in the whole, let's say, software industry. And this is now clear. Open source has won, but open source is not free and open source software. Free means that the community can regain access to the actual product with the right license. But yes, the debate is open, and this is really passionate to discuss about. Thank you.
Great input. We have another question from Borut. What do you think decision makers should do in relation to increase the use of open source software among people? Luca, I see you are thinking, so I imagine you have something to add on this.
I think the right sector to act is exactly like education, because like, and now we focus on adult education, but focusing on schools. And during the research for the OpenAI, we, at least for the Italian part, we had found something that dating back to 2014, where actually like the ministry kind of forced schools to use open source softwares and tools, but then it wasn't, in practice, it wasn't really implemented that. So I believe that one thing is to create from the policy like perspective, like effective strategies that push schools, and in particular like young students, to get familiar with those tools, that so they grow up with that, and then it will be something like not completely new as it is for now. It is now for maybe adult learners and adult people.
From a point of view, I don't think that governments had to work to increase the usage of open source software. I think that governments have to ensure that their services that are accessible, that are interoperable with any kind of software, and have to ensure that citizens are competent for working with any kind of software. And the kind of software you are going to use, it's a decision you have to take. Obviously, in these projects, like what was explaining, that in the Xarxa Puntic or in schools, the government have to decide what software is going to use, because their decision, or because in the case of Catalonia, each school is deciding which kind of software is using. Basically, they can decide between Windows or Linux. I don't know if we have any school in Catalonia working exclusively with Mac OS, but the government is providing support with this to these two operating systems, and what is not doing the government of Catalonia is paying licenses of another software in schools. Or so we are, if a school is working with sorry, if a school is working in Windows operating system, they are using basically open source software in Windows, because nobody's paying for a license of another software there. But it's a strategical decision that took the government of Catalonia many years ago, and it probably will drive to an increase of the use of open source software. But I'm not sure if this is the right decision for every administration.
Veronique, I see you have your microphone open. Would you like to add something? Okay.
No, sorry, I have a problem. Sorry, it wasn't. No.
Okay.
It's okay.
So yeah, that was great discussion. Thank you very much to all. What are the most important things, or the most important thing that needs to happen for FLOSS and free and open culture?
I think I can say, like, go with one. In my opinion, it's about knowledge. I mean, let people like spread the knowledge, spread the FLOSS culture, so that people know that, because at least that's maybe my impression from the Italian perspective, is that the knowledge people have about the alternatives, at least, is very limited, and is sometimes biased. So I think it's one good thing to do.
Okay, someone else? Do you have any input on this? You normally have very clear answers to this kind of things. Would you like to add something?
Can you repeat the question?
I cannot hear Thanasis.
Leonor, Thanasis is asking you to rephrase the question, to present the question again.
Okay, the question is, what is the most important thing that needs to happen?
You mean at which level? I mean, is the level of local level, internationally, or how do you? What kind of answer are you? Or what kind of change do you want to see? Where do you want the change to see happen? I think that what Luca and Francesco was saying was I mean, is summarized quite well. I mean, what needs to be happening in the sense that Luca is saying, look at the skills that people can develop when they are using this kind of loss culture solutions, when they are participating on this kind of movements, and look at the results that they create, both in terms of open knowledge and open education. And then Francesco is saying, we've done it, and we've done it also at a very local level with local computers. We've done it with local associations. We've done it in a regional and level, and we've done it. So I think that what they're both saying and demonstrating is that when there is a clear will for change to happen, especially at the local or say central level, the change is taking place. But what I would like to ask Francesco is that I was a little bit surprised, by his let's say, he made a statement saying that sometimes government should do nothing for that. But the experience that we have from the Barcelona, let's say, state and municipality is that the government has done a lot actually to have this kind of policy roadmap clear. And I think from looking from outside, it has been very successful. So I would say that your proposal would be different. Government should have a clear roadmap to this. So it's a question to Francesco.
Yeah, what I was saying, not the government not doing nothing, but what I was saying is that I'm not sure that the government have to promote the usage of open source, but have to ensure that the users of open source can access with the equality of opportunities to the government services, and that all citizens are competent with using a system with independence of the kind of software it is using. That's my opinion, not what is being done.
So how do you achieve that when you have, let's say, many countries, and again, don't take Barcelona like an example, you can take Spain as a whole, you can take other areas of Spanish, not Extremadura, but maybe others, or other countries in Europe like, like France, like Italy, like Greece, where proprietary software solutions are the norm, are let's say, what people do. So how can you actually be neutral when the environment itself is very much biased for one type of solutions?
I think that basing the communication of public administration and relationship with citizenship on open standards is a good way of providing this kind of neutrality. Talking about neutrality is it's because governments never are neutral, and as you say, proprietary software companies play a role of lobby that not it's played by the open source movement. probably you have to do things, but what I will cover my what I was saying is that you don't have to force people to move to open source software, because it is not necessarily better, and in many cases you are going to face non-free software in your life. So you have to be confident and competent with the usage of any kind of software. We have a digital competences accreditation in Catalonia that it's 10 years old, and it's based in this neutral point of view from the technology. And being neutral many times means that you have to favor open source solutions, because the others are the common, the rule. But it's not a matter of not teaching closed source solutions. It's a matter of putting the open at the same level. Almost.
I think we have understood a little bit more your thesis, because at the very beginning I was like scared, like, okay, Francesc is saying that, but yeah, I now understand more deeply your approach. Thank you.
So what is the role of these communities that we mentioned, like the Kaban, like Linux? What's the role, and how can we start a community or enroll in a community?
Is this question for me, or is it general for all the panelists? I think that's the difficult question. And I have no answer for it. Well, you can start a community by publishing a piece of software or a piece of knowledge, but to achieve a successful community is another matter of science. It's something that goes beyond your understanding, I think. Very good projects have not successful communities, and by disappearing because of that, or are supported by a very little community, and there are not very good projects that have such a great communities of users and developers, and surprisingly they stay for years working, but not a very good pieces of software. So I don't know what's the answer to this.
May I make a remark? Just to say that by our experience, where we were joining the project, we realized that for us, it was not so much to create a community, but it was more joining a community who already exists. So I completely agree that I mean, a good community is a community who's alive with a lot of exchange, and it's not always easy to create this. And in the long-term period, even it's more difficult. But I think it's very difficult to see in which community am I part in, so which community I will join. That's why I invited Kaban here, because to think about that, in reality, the community about the digital public space in Brussels, in a certain way, it's Kaban, but also that's why I invited Fred. Fred is also a community promoting floss culture since a very long time. So we were outside of this culture, even if we were using this kind of tools, we were not really inside of this culture. So it was really more discovering a community who already exists since a long time and who's fighting to survive and to develop herself. So joining this community, you give your own power to this community to facilitate the surviving of the community who already exists. That's my remark. Thank you.
Does someone has more questions or would like to say something? Maybe someone from the audience. If there is profits, more passionate about open culture, a culture that makes us as society to improve ourselves, to go further, to innovate, to share ideas, to be smarter. I don't care about companies making money, but I do care about the transparency and ethics and privacy. So I will invite you all to maybe comment on this or say your final thoughts, because we are reaching the end of this panel. No comments? Great. Then I have, I'm going to propose a coffee break. I'm going to propose that we close this panel here now, and we will be returning at 16:45. So in 15 minutes.
Just one thing, Leonor, thanks to all of you for all the interesting inputs. But can we all turn on the cameras for a group picture? I would love to have you for a group picture here in Brussels, but this one on the screen will also do. But yeah, we need as many cameras on as possible, and for sure, this is not just to check who's actually here and who's not. This is just, you know, also a side result from this nice exercise. Excellent. Hi, everyone. Nice to see all of you.
Thank you all.
Well, yeah, I did my screenshot, and definitely, yeah, the coffee break, 15 minutes. We started with 4:45 to present you what we actually did for 2 years and what are the results from the OpenE project. Thank you very much to Leonor. Thank you very much to all the panelists and guests and everybody that contributed to the debate. It was interesting. I mean, I'm one of those you mentioned here and there, not being that familiar with FLOSS and open culture and just getting into it. So yeah, this opened some new perspective also for me. So thank you very much for that. And I believe that it was also very useful for everyone. So see you in 15 minutes. Have a nice coffee or tea, or I mean, it's late enough also for anything else, but that's up to you. So see you in 15 minutes. Hello, hello. 4:45. There's a saying in Slovenia. I'm originally from Slovenia, that we are punctual as a Swiss watch. And since Whiternet Foundation is a Swiss-based organization, I see Thanasi smiling there. So yeah, now we are entering the second part of today's conference. The presentation of our results from the 2 years of work and development. This part will be moderated by Thanasis. Yeah, without further ado, Thanasis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you both. I'm also Greek, so I'm not qualified to talk about Swiss watches, but yeah, I will do my best to somehow accommodate and facilitate this. So then, thank you for staying out with us for this next hour. We will try to make it as interesting and exciting as the first part was. In this second hour, we have, let's say, two important things that will happen. Florian Florian and some other members of the project will present different results of the project regarding research, training content, piloting, and so on and so forth. But we'll have also a part where trainees and trainers coming from our institutions will share their own, let's say, knowledge and understanding that of what we did for this couple of years, and particularly for the pilot training. So stay with us, because these two let's say, two different things will be mixed together, and I think that will be a very nice place to be for the next hour. So Florian, please, can you give us an overview of the research finding of our work for OpenAI? And don't forget to unmute you if you want.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I will try to the main goals of the project and to explain quickly how we arrived to the results. So I will focus on to explain the desk research and the field research, who was the base to define what will be inside of the toolbox and the curriculum we propose. So if I take back the first question, what is OpenAI? So AI, it's for adult education. I tell you because I understood it after a few months only. So, and the main goal, it's a very basic idea. It's to improve the teaching and the digital skills of educators in non-formal adult education. So it's specially designed for digital public space in a large understanding of this term, and it's to supporting the trainers, so to upskill their skill, but it's also to empower the final user, the final user. So the three priorities of the project, I will go very quick on this because you know it and it has been said already. It's to promote access and learning through open educational resources, what we call OERs, and to promote free, libre, and open source technology in non-formal educational sectors. So to support the upskilling of adult educators and learners. And the third point, to address educators and trainers working in the non-formal adult education sector to reinforce digital skills and competence. So voilà, this is very general and it doesn't help so much the understanding, I think. But what I will try to do now is to explain you how we arrived there. So we made first desk research. And so the objective of the desk research was to define the state of art in teaching open source technology. So trying to map available training offer and available OERs, or open education resources. So what is an open education resources? It's teaching or learning and research material in any medium, digital or otherwise, that reside in the public domain or have been released under an open license to permit no-cost access, use, adaptation, and redistribution by other with or limited restriction or no restriction. So the main objective of this first part, so the desk research, is to have an overview, an update overview about all the available open education resource used for adult education. And we did this desk research in each country. After, another point for the desk research is to list all the useful resources that maybe we can use on the second part of the work. It means the creation of the curriculum. So that's it, the desk research, but quickly we start in a focus group to understand also the specific need of the e-facilitators in the field of open source technology. So we tried this approach as a qualitative research. And so each piloting country partners were responsible for the organization of the focus group, with around 8 or 10 participants selected among e-facilitators, training providers in the field of non-formal adult education. So what we understood with this field research, mainly it's a general lack of awareness about open source technology, floss culture, and even if the people were using it, they were not really, they didn't know why, they didn't know what was the reason about choosing these tools and not another. User refer also, another thing interesting we understood is that user refer to open source technology as an alternative to proprietary software or closed software. The reason is maybe that on the labor market, it's the proprietary software who is still the mainstream. Voilà, and it results to a poor knowledge of those tools among the wide audience. That's what we had as a feeling. And another interesting point as a result of the focus group, so interesting information is that even if people had knowledge about floss culture or open source tools, it was most of the time the result of their own curiosity. It was a kind of self-learning who bring this knowledge. Voilà. And I tell this because in the conclusion of the research, it will come back maybe. So I will try to go quickly. Sorry to for my English, it's not perfect. So Luca already talked about that also, but I want to say it again, that we try to use the DigiComp Edu framework as a reference, both to designing the research framework, but also to identify the answer to the questionnaires. And so using this framework, we realize that mainly the points where we need to focus on in the curriculum are 3 areas. So what they call area 6. So it means facilitating the learner's digital competence. So on one side, it will be necessary to work on modules really on the competence of the learners, but also empowering the learners. So it was the second area. It's really giving the learners the power to select how we would like to build the curriculum, really to involve in a participative way. And the third area, it's to work on the professional engagement linked to communication and collaboration for professional development of the learners. I think it was very useful for us to make these focus groups, maybe for two reasons. First, it was qualitative information, and it was a way of involving the people inside of the project. So most of the people who show up to the focus group were people very much motivated, and some of them were helping the project until today, like Fred. But a lot of other people from other digital public space get information about the project thanks to the focus. So not only the information we get, but also a way of involving the people in the project. So the conclusion, I will try to go quickly. Sorry if I take too much time, but I will go to the important points. So to summarize the key elements that we found in this research, it's maybe a lack of three elements. First, a lack of educational strategy, a lack of holistic approach, and a lack of common vision. So it seems clear that none of the training offer that we analyze, that we discover by the partners in each country, are directly addressed to adult learners in the field of adult education. So we didn't found a training offer addressing the needs of the learners working in adult education. So in a certain way, the curriculum we propose is innovative. And it's an answer to the fact that we don't see a holistic approach was proposed for the person working in this field. Alors, taking into account this, we realize that it's very necessary, if there is a low level of knowledge, to make an introduction about the context, that it's impossible to talk about this topic without a general explanation about the historical, the economical, the political context, about big data, about privacy, all these things, we need an introduction, taking this in account to put the person in a position where he will be able to make a choice, a constant choice. Voilà, that was one remark. And to go quickly, I will show up the four conclusions the research underlined. So two main effects. On one side, the educator, as well as the general public, often have a very superficial knowledge and a little awareness about FLOSS culture, open culture. And on the other hand, the lack of structured support and promotion has pushed to the creation of many networks and associations that independently try to cope with this deficiency. So the main positive and tangible effect we can observe is the fact that the presence on the market of a huge number of free and open resources. There is a lot of things, but maybe not a holistic approach would take it together to propose a way of learning. So that's one point. Nevertheless, in the four partner countries, we witness in the last years a rapid proliferation of initiatives, network, association in support of open culture and technology. So you always have initiatives who show up. A third point, and there are only four, even in those organizations whose members are, how to say, aware of the potential of open source culture, the expertise and knowledge around those resources is often very limited to the trainers' self-learning and to the interest the individual have to discover this, but it's not a structured approach. And the last point is that the OpenAIA propose seems to meet an educational deficiency and attempt to set some guidelines to produce a structured response. to the need of the educators working in the field of non-formal adult education. So it's like a first proposition. Voilà, that I will let it hear about the first desk research and the field research, and I will propose you a question just after, of course. I hope it's clear, but maybe the most important thing to understand that it's not so much learning a program or learning a new tool. It's really about adult education. It's a long life learning program, and it's really about co-creating knowledge and information. And it's this way of co-creating knowledge. You do it by doing. So making a wiki, using a path, loading information on Wikiversity, tagging a place in OpenStreetMap. So it's really about doing, and doing something. You participate in a collective way in creating a knowledge, and it's this co-creating movement was the most important, I think. The tool itself, it's more a consequence. And maybe just one thing I would like to add is that there is also a very special link with this methodology, the floss culture, and the e-learning. I mean that we have a module about flipped classroom, but also the peer-to-peer logic, the tutorial, the way to access to code, access to the resources to understand the tool, access to help of people of the community. All these things are based on exchange. And so it's more about what kind of tools we decide to use between our community. Because it will define what kind of work, or how are we going to work. So it's more to make a choice about which tools we want to decide how we want to work together. It's not so much a training about a special program. Voilà. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Florian. You're an excellent speaker when you're off text. When you're conveying yourself, it's very clear. And thank you for bringing back this kind of principles that we had in the beginning, the things that we found out, and how we responded to them after with the different approaches that we had in the project. And yes, I completely agree in the way that you put, let's say, the learner the learning experience in the center of this project, and how we tried actually to make more than a tool, more than a learning tool. It's just like it's an experience actually. It's an adventure that you have to go yourself inside and see where it takes you in the future. So thank you very much, Florian. And I think Leonor that comes after and Esther that follows, Leonor, that will give us another view of both of the training content and the piloting that took place in all the countries. Leonor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to continue what Florian was saying, because it was really, really the source of the things I would like to share with you today. So we took this open approach very seriously, and in our results, we decided to create a way for people to contribute and for people to be responsible for their own learning process. And having said this, I would like to share with you first our online academy, which was where we hosted our scenarios. So like Florian was saying, the first part of our project was to do a best practice research, and we then had some groups where we tried to gather information about what would be really important for this community and for learners, what were the domains. And we came up with 18 scenarios that go from self to licenses, to the DigiCompedu framework that Luca mentioned before, and many other topics. And we created this platform where we added all the information gathered from the scenarios. The scenarios are presented always in English, but also in different languages. Here is an example of how that works. So this is the English version of the scenario, and see the square here. In a few moments will appear the presentation. We need to leave it a little bit alone for it to charge. But the most important thing to say is that this was a platform, this was our online academy. So in this online academy, we have all the scenarios in 6 languages, ranging from English to, sorry, this is crashing. Sorry, guys.
You know,
This,
I propose you to stop this screen sharing because maybe it affects the way that you are being listened from us. So if it's possible, maybe you can, yeah, that will listen very good when you don't have the screen sharing, because when this comes, I think the computer overloads and then it's
better now?
Yes, much better. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you saw the platform. I will add in a few seconds the link so you can see it yourself in your own computers.
I will do it for you. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanasis will help us. So as you will see, on the bottom left side of our page, we have a free license. So answering again to the question that Frederick made in the beginning, the first panel, in our resources, in our outputs, we decided to make this as open as possible. And we even have a module or a presentation and a tutorial for participants to edit this academy if they would like to contribute. This is completely free, and we have the licenses very present on the documents. These topics are very broad and go through many dimensions that are very important to this open and free software culture and movement. And here in this academy is the place where all the information was gathered. Besides having this platform as an open academy, we have also SlideWiki. And Thanasis, I will ask you to share SlideWiki if you don't mind.
Yes.
The link so everyone can keep up with what I'm saying. So SlideWiki is a very interesting tool. It's a platform to share presentations. It's a place where you can organize your presentations and decks and make them available for the community. Is an open web-based open courseware authoring system. It supports the learning content and authoring and management tools for collaboration and crowdsourcing. This web application facilitates the collaboration around educational content. That means that with SlideWiki, users can create and collaborate their own slides and their own presentations. And after they are ready, they can share them back with the community. To notice also that this tool is also under a Creative Commons license, and people are free to use our content and to edit further and reshare it. I think that our intention was very clear here. We wanted to give power back to the participants, to the students, to the people who are actively learning these materials. They have a very important role in deciding what they want to learn and how they want to learn. Another thing that I would like to add is that the SlideWiki presentations, they are being uploaded to the scenarios in the online academy, meaning that at the end of the project, each scenario will have the theoretical part, but also the presentations in English that will be accessible to all. I don't know if someone has questions on this part, or we can leave them for the end of the session.
Yes, we'll take all questions together at the end of the session. And thank you, Leonor. I tried to share some of the slides, some of the material, but I'm sure that we can do a better job in the following minutes. With more precise links where people can find, let's say, all the PowerPoints and all the information they need. Esther, can I invite you to give us now an overview of how the work in the piloting took place in the different countries? The floor is yours, Esther.
Okay, I think you can see my presentation. Okay, we were piloting this new content and these slides and this curriculum we have co-created between partners. But when we were about to start the training, then COVID-19 thing appears and make things very difficult for us, because it was just in that moment that we are about to start. So we need to go with to stay at home, not being allowed to teach on open spaces or classrooms. So all you know about this. Yeah, we really succeed. We were able to pilot the training, the curriculum in the 4 countries from March to July, with very similar but slightly different approaches, because we need to change this blended training that it was foreseen at the very beginning to another thing, to a full online or almost full online training. So it was very, very quick, very, very fast. So we didn't have enough time to make a big agreement between the consortium. So as I will explain, and partners involved can also explain during the dialogue that we are having now, we make some similar but slightly different approaches using different technologies, and it was really interesting. At the end, that was one of the best things of this piloting. Only Belgium was able to run face-to-face sessions. It was really, really amazing experience. So our training strategies were providing some communication platform and systems, most of them synchronous, but another one were asynchronous between trainers and participants. We make content and activities available through digital channels, several approaches. Again, we were building the academy. We provide support systems to the students because they need it. And obviously it's very important in the training scenarios. And we build this training, learning national communities. So we make the training more than a training. It was just starting a new community of trainers interested in the FLOSS and common culture. And that was also very, very interesting and very appreciated by participants. We also add some webinars, some video conversations. In some countries, we use more. These video conferences were used more than another ones. So I will show you very quickly the different platforms we use. For example, in Switzerland, they made a community and communication available by weekly emails, and they built up a discussion group on Telegram, and this group was very, very active. In Italy, they use Moodle with a combination of video conferences software. In that moment, it was Zoom, the ones who feel the Italian people and also Spanish people feel more comfortable. In Belgium, Max use Dispatch, Etherpad, Eleform, face-to-face meetings, Jitsi, and email support to the students. And here in Catalonia, we use Moodle, Jitsi, Zoom, and Mattermost, which is similar to Slack or WhatsApp communication tool. It was very, very interesting. So we agree as a consortium to try to test all the content we have developed. I think we have developed, as Leonor has said, a lot of content that is available now in English and some other languages, depending on the country. So here you have an overview of which model was implemented in which country. So the flash culture and the emergence of copyleft and free license were implemented in almost all the countries, whether the other models were implemented in some, usually more than one country. So now we have this Dixcom Edu, Flip Classroom, Wikidata, SlideWiki, coding with Scratch. All the contents have been implemented and proved in one or more than one country. as you can see here in my slides. The participants' profile were trainers and tutors and e-facilitators, as we think that this is the very beginning of the creation of a community involving teachers and professors in this culture, so they can use these tools to teach their students. This is very, very easy, especially if the students are new on technology. And it's not so easy if students are used to private and closed tools. But we believe that training the trainers will be a successful strategy, as it seems that it had happened. We deliver 60 or more than 60 hours of training. And we use our staff members as trainers, because we are teaching organizations in general, and also add some key experts in different countries. So despite the coronavirus thing and all the problems we have faced, we have more or less an average of 50% of participants achieve the certificate. We need to think that this is difficult to assess or to evaluate, because we were at the very beginning of the crisis, and you know, most of the trainers has a lot of training to implement with their students, so they were not so available for being trained themselves. But we try, and at the end it was not so bad, the numbers we achieve. We also provide a certification, obviously, and certifications is very personalized. So we create this set of budgets you can see here with the content of the curriculum, and we assemble the certificate just considering the curriculum that has been implemented. Now what we think is we have an enormous database of knowledge and training materials and training sources that can be used. So most of the partners, or all of the partners, are committed to continuously training the trainers in order to implement the whole curriculum during next years, who knows. Obviously, we face difficulties and we detect some weaknesses. For example, going 100% online at the very beginning of the training sessions. We didn't have enough time to plan the transformation from blended to full online. We also realized that the communication or the feeling, the group activities were not the same, because this lack of face-to-face opportunity. Some of the partners also, or the trainers also mentioned in the final report that they need to have more local examples, but we realized that it was not easy for us to find examples about training people using FLOSS tools, but we are interested in having more, in looking and searching for more of these examples. So this is something that we can still do, and we are doing in the next years, despite the project is officially finishing now. We also had the difficulty that it was not easy to implement practical activities or groupal activities using digital tools only. And then in some countries, in some communities, we find that we didn't have the technological equipment that could be ideally used. That was something related to going 100% online, and because we were addressing teachers of all kinds of teachers, and really some of us really interested in teaching teachers of communities with some social, economical difficulties background. Strengths, of course, we find a lot of strengths. People says that the material, the sources, the training material was well constructed and well delivered. So they, in general, they thank the effort of the teachers, of the trainers, to teach them, to show them the opportunities of using this culture. And the topics were well selected. Obviously, we have a list of topics that we could include in the future, and we probably will. And participants in general said that the course had helped them to acquire a better, bigger understanding of the open source framework and also the FLOSS culture. So for some of the students, it was like an experience of discovering a new world, a new atmosphere, a new club or community where you can develop and continuously work with the help of your colleagues. Participants also recognize that they have been developed during the training their own digital competencies, and they are very happy with that. But not only because we have used communication tools in order to improve the online training, but also because these tools were using for online teaching. So they have learned about how to go online, 100% online. And this during the COVID period, it was very much appreciated for some of them. Most of the participants declared that they will use the contents, all the content that are available on the platform that Leonor has shared with us, or most of them. And we think that we can revisit it and improve it and add more content. And I think that in our website that Thanasis will share you in the chat for sure, you will find the ways to join us as a community and to add your own content and to help us to how to improve our academia and slides and etc. So building a community of practice has proved to be a really good strategy, because trainers find some help between them, and also trainees find that there is a community supporting them in the future. Our conclusions is that this piloting was a great opportunity to create this community, that it was our intention from the very beginning. We find that some external organizations, external to the consortium, were interested in taking part of the project, specifically social and solidarity economy-based organizations are interested in having this training or having this experience of belonging to our community. And also the pro-communal movement in several countries is also interested in joining us and make this initiative stronger. The other conclusion is that the competencies, the skills that the trainer needs to do his or her job is improved during this, has been improved during this project. So we also take care about the digital competencies, that it can be replicated. This project, this material, these sources can be implemented in another countries. It's very easy to translate it and to publish the translation. And yeah, that the training needs to be a great experience for trainees. That was our main conclusion during this coronavirus crisis. Having a training that is fun, it's pleasant, it's playful, was a really, really good thing. So that's the most important things about our training. And yeah, I think it's the final point of my presentation, but obviously I'm open to any questions you can ask.
Thank you, Esther. Your presentation made us want to go back again and do all the activities all over. Thank you. This is really a very nice presentation of the results. Before we take questions, let's move to Chiara, Kate, and Brahim that will actually confirm or not our, let's say, their view on how they lived the training courses, both as trainers or trainees. So the first one is that we have the floor is Chiara. Chiara, hello. You have the floor. Tell us what you felt when what you took away from this project, and what was the experience. What is the future for you, please?
Okay, thank you. Just I will introduce myself. I'm Chiara Borsini. I run a workshop on digital storytelling during the piloting. For me, it was a very interesting experience. Of course, something that I think we share with the other trainers is the fact that unfortunately the piloting coincided with the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. So of course it was a challenge for us to run the workshops entirely online. On one end, I would say that it was a good experience and a chance to test actually the tools that we were talking about during the training. On the other end, was a little bit weird to not adding the chance to have a direct contact with the learner. So it's something that we needed to deal with. Fortunately, we had the chance to guarantee the interaction, the interactivity and the exchange that usually take place during the face-to-face workshop, thanks also to the tools that we use. As Esther mentioned, we use a Moodle platform, which was a good way to guarantee participation and interaction from the participant on the online workshops. So thanks also to some extra tools that we use, like H5P, plugin, interactive quizzes, uploading of assignments that were graded and they could receive feedback. I would say that something that really, let's say, surprised me is the fact that I found that most of the participants were quite, I would say, scared about the topics that we talked about, especially because when you talk about technologies, open technologies, digital skills, people think that they need to be technicians to use these tools. And they completely forget, or just they don't know that there's a creative process behind it. So they were really surprised when we discovered that we use a method, I'm particularly referring to storytelling method, which is really creative and collaborative. So this is something that it's also related with relationships, with interpersonal relationship. It's something that's involved in the emotional level. So when the participant discovered that, they were surprised and they felt that they were not so far from this kind of technologies. So I would focus again on the method. Of course, open source technologies gives a lot of possibilities, but I felt that the participants were particularly interested in the process, in the method that we used, which is quite complex. I mean, the use of technologies is something that comes not only to the end, but it's something that you have to prepare yourself with a complex learning path. What makes me optimistic about the use that the learners will do in the future in their field is the fact that this method is something that is really easily applicable to many fields and to the most disparate topics. So this is just a bit sample of my personal experience, which again has been challenging, but really, really interesting. And of course, we had the chance also to show how to practically use the tools that we were talking about in the field of education in this peculiar period. So yeah.
Thank you, Chiara. This was really useful, and thank you very much for your testimony as a trainer in this effort. And I like the way that you always keep saying that this was challenging, because it is challenging, but at the same time that you find interesting points for the future for you to take away with for your next trainings or for the next activities that you plan for.
Yeah.
I think this is exactly what also Esther was saying before. It's exactly the thing. What we think we were successful on is exactly to cultivate this curiosity for the future and provide alternatives and new ways of doing things, both in terms of method maybe and tools secondly. Thank you, Cara. And can I invite Kate now to share with us her experience on with the learning content and the learning experience of the OpenAI. Kate, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tanasi.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes. So my name is Kate Jackson. I'm a project manager working out here in Brussels. And I've also had the opportunity to work with Y Internet in the past, which is how I received the fantastic invitation to participate in this learning initiative. So I've worked with open source materials in the past. I'm not a complete novice when I came to it, but something that I really appreciated and that I've actually heard repeated through Esther's comments and also Chiara's is just the sort of community effort that was given to create a structure. I was in the group that was operating out of Geneva, so we were communicating through Telegram, but it was great because you could just see how the discussion would evolve after people received the new course material. And the other thing that I really valued is that it wasn't just one form. There were a wide variety of tools that were used to convey the materials, and it was told in a storytelling sort of approach. So something that I really valued was that it went into also the history and source of it, why this was created, and the philosophy behind open source technologies, which to me at least helped me to reinvestigate the frame that I held these concepts in, and look and think and imagine new ways that I could apply it to both the work that I'm doing now and work that I hope to do in the future. I'd taken down a couple of notes while everyone else was speaking, just to make sure that I, one, didn't repeat, but two, hit everything that I wanted to. But yeah, I think that in a nutshell, that was my experience. It was overwhelmingly positive. It was really interesting to dive back into this realm because for the last 6 months, I've been more involved in a project that's taken me away from open source and into much more locked technologies. And it's just lovely to see the constant evolution that is taking place in this environment, in this community, and be able to rejoin that conversation with this beautiful overview that was constructed.
Then I have a question for you, Kate, and thank you for this feedback. Because you're also a trainer and you're doing actually this kind of activities yourself in other situations and opportunities. So why do you take like a takeaway for your future activities from this learning course?
I really liked the way in which I've spoken with Leonor about this as well. I normally don't respond very well to newsletter style learning, but I actually very much enjoyed the structure, the brief overview and synopsis that you get each week, and the ability to return back to materials. And I now have my own personalized textbook sort of that has come through these materials. So I like the way that it was all constructed and it wasn't some bulky PDF. It was very interactive. It sourced to all of these different places and resources on the internet. So again, linking me to that. I really liked the way in which the materials were organized and presented. It wasn't overwhelming. I think in the past, because I started with my training a while ago, more in like traditional educational structures. So in my head, it's all matrix and curriculums, and like that can be overwhelming to a learner at the start. And I felt as if this program did a very good job of setting my expectation as a learner in a broad way, but not overwhelming me with too much information at the start. So it kept me involved, kept me interested, but I was at no point bogged down by the amount of information or materials. Plus, there are opportunities for me to be interactive, to have fun with the materials that were being presented, with the concepts that were being presented. It really, the calls to action were there, but it was just, really nicely done. It was a good touch for learning in this, like everybody's mentioned, in these strange times. It's also an easy time for learners to lose motivation. And I felt as if the materials that you created and presented always had a positive, uplifting attitude to them that encouraged people to challenge themselves but not be overwhelmed with a challenge. It was just very nicely done.
Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you for sharing this. And then this allows me to give the floor to Brahim and ask him what is his feeling, his learning experience in this process. Brahim, the floor is yours. And even if you don't have a camera, you can just unmute yourself so we can just listen to your presentation.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I'm Brahim from Brussels, and my experience with the open source was actually very good. I was thinking that I knew already quite a lot about it, but I learned quite a lot, more about the floss culture and more about the philosophy behind it, which was very interesting from my point of view. I enjoyed the conversation with the others. There is, I must thank Florian and the others. That was very productive way. The negative points for me was that some people were still holding back. I think for open source, you have to be a little bit dedicated. And some IT, mostly from hardware, they don't want to enter this world because it's brand new for them. Most of the time I work with elderly people, and I must give them the opportunity to choose, because I start from scratch with them in computing. And I like to give them, look, you have Microsoft, you have other products you can choose from. And also they're very aware, elderly people are very aware about their privacy, much more than younger generation, I guess. And from my point of view, to give them the choice is the priority. And it wasn't that kind of, for me, the wrong things also is we talk too much maybe about politics, a little bit too much. For me, it's good. I like it. But some people were like, okay, it's just like they want to talk about politics, they just shut down. But some others, they go, they are much more dedicated in this way. So I guess it was a great opportunity to learn, especially during COVID time. And it was amazingly well done. And it was easy access. It was very easy to access to it. Here it is.
Well, this is really nice, Ibrahim. Can I ask you the same question that I asked Kate for your future, let's say, trainings, your future workshops? What do you take away as the most important lesson from this for you to reuse in the future?
Yeah. Well, for me, sorry. Well, for me, it's more about smartphones. I really should focus on smartphones, because this is really the most quite difficult to find. Mostly elderly people, they start with the smartphones. Can you hear me or?
Yes, you go ahead. This is getting better. Don't worry.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You can continue.
I have oh, sorry, because I'm working with my smartphone.
Yeah.
And I really focus on security with elderly people, and I just keep on. I start with smartphone, and I make them much more choose like Firefox instead of Google Chrome or DuckDuckGo and so on, and really focus on the privacy, especially on smartphone and also on Windows. I try to talk about Linux, but it's quite difficult for them to enter this world. But I just try to avoid Google most of the time, to be honest. This is my priority.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for sharing this. And yes, this is a good point, actually, the way that we need sometimes to understand that tools are not so accessible for everyone, and sometimes we need to be more specific on mobile platforms or on other kind of solutions. So thank you for this. It's something to think for future activities. So I think that Borut, this gives you an excellent, let's say, overview and an excellent opportunity for you to share with us our conclusions and our recommendations regarding the work that we've done and how we go on in the future with this. Borut, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Thanasis. Yeah, basically everything that you heard now, I mean, from the perspective of the project and also from the trainees and the trainers, we tried together, not we tried, but we put everything together, and we developed specific guidelines and recommendations for oh man, and now I forgot the word, for transferability. Yes, I'm sorry, it's I guess it's a bit late for my head. For the transferability and upscaling of the OpenAI methodology and activities that we did. We targeted these two processes to two specific target groups. One are the policymakers, and we didn't actually quite define on which level, because we think it applies to everyone on local, regional, national, and also European level. And also specifically, we developed recommendations for educators, for e-facilitators, trainers. At the end of the day, even teachers could use some of these recommendations on how to basically transfer the floss and the model, the methodology we did into their own environment, into their own realities. So just to quickly go through with the policymakers, we emphasize that the basic values of that should or that guide public governance, so meaning transparency, openness, credibility, also apply to the core values of FLOSS, and we built on that, and then we added specific recommendations, like to increase the support for FLOSS-based policies and initiatives all on institutional level, like recognizing the introduction and recommending the use of FLOSS technologies and FLOSS tools in different environments, and also financial support for this usage, to give greater visibility to these tools, also meaning to provide space in different forums, like conferences, like public policy debates, to highlight, to show what is the contribution of FLOSS, and to basically come on board on the awareness raising end of the FLOSS, together with all the organizations and individuals working here. And to use the transparency and this effectiveness that I mentioned before of FLOSS, and incorporate FLOSS tools into the basically public governance software or system-based tool that they use. This is maybe a part of the FLOSS that is most incorporated into what the public policy or public governance is actually working on. To connect, to recognize the added value of FLOSS in terms of reskilling or learning the basic digital skills of citizens. Basic digital skills are essential for all of us to function in today's society, but there should be a variety of ways on how to get them, how to achieve them, how to learn them, and FLOSS Path is equally effective, or we also say that it's more effective than some of the other tools or some of the other training paths for citizens to use it like this. And at the end of the day, it's not just about the contribution of FLOSS as such, but it's the combined effort of all the different stakeholders in the field of public arena, and what can all the sides get from FLOSS. And here FLOSS and everything connected to FLOSS really flourishes. With the training providers, educators, we highlighted before we addressed the recommendations to them, we also highlighted that the transition to FLOSS can be hard. That's why we also developed a simple step-by-step roadmap that can facilitate this. And here we propose, going slow, getting to know the FLOSS world, then to look at yourself and analyze what you need, what your organization needs, and then to use the flexibility and adaptability of FLOSS tools to adapt the training programs or FLOSS tools to your own needs. Then to test the tools and methodologies, and then to focus on developing the digital skills and building the capacity of the organizations, of the organization to use the FLOSS, and then as a last step also to contribute to the growth of the FLOSS community and to wider communities they operate in as organizations or education providers. And specifically, we also recognized or recommend to use the FLOSS to upskill themselves, the educators, to gain advanced digital skills connected to the DigiComp Edu framework, as we mentioned, and wider, to enrich their educational resources with FLOSS as such, and to recognize that the added value is not only in the knowledge and skills, but also in the community development and contribution that goes hand in hand with learning. And that the contribution of FLOSS in terms of digital inclusion, because of the variety of reasons that were already mentioned today a few times in the panel and later on, that I won't repeat, just to recognize the added value of FLOSS in bridging the digital divide and acting as a digitally inclusive society as such. And not to keep you too long, we also address the specific, the future development of European framework for the digital competences of educators and what the contribution FLOSS could there be. But since we are also running out of time, I will post the link of the guidelines and recommendations in the chat. And please do check them, and also do contact us if you think that something should be added or something should be taken out. I mean, it's a live document. It's as the community of FLOSS is alive and kicking and modifying and adapting to the different needs of the society, so are we with the project. And even though we are finishing it in 2 weeks, this is something that will continue and will live its own life after the project is finished. Thank you, Thanasis. Back to you.
Thank you both. Yes, you summarized quite well the whole work that we've done, and at least the things that we think that are important to share with the wider community of educators and policymakers everywhere in Europe and worldwide. This is the time for questions and answers. We will be more than happy to answer to any questions that you may have in the next minutes. We have some time for this. Before I open the floor for questions, I would really like to thank all Digital for a great for giving us the opportunity to have such a project and work with them as coordinators was really an unbelievable experience. And thank you particularly Barbara for in the beginning writing the proposal and helping us all the way to giving it alive. And Borut, thank you for arriving at the moment. And now I speak for all partners, I am sure of it, and giving us your expertise and your excellent knowledge. This really helped us consolidate the results and the work that we've done. So great thank you to all of the digital organization, and in particular to Borut and Barbara for this opportunity. And so after this parenthesis, are there any questions that people would like to ask, depending whatever thing that you've listened this afternoon, whatever issue, guidelines, or whatever. So the floor is open if you have any questions or any kind of interventions that you would like to share with us. Yeah, I understand that it's 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and questions would be limited. And in any case, thank you so much for being with us for all this time. I think, Borut, I will pass the floor to you now, saying that that I have no more questions for anyone. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thanasis, for great moderation. Thank you, everyone, for joining our event. And yeah, it goes both ways. Thank you for the kind words, Thanasis, and it's been a pleasure working with everyone. And what's really the most encouraging is that I think we really delivered as a partnership, and it's rarely that you see such a passion in a project towards the topics that the projects deal that I saw here in this project with you guys. And I kind of see that in the whole community that's connected to FLOSS. And maybe at the beginning, like a few months ago, I didn't completely understand it, but now I do understand it much better, and I appreciate it a lot. And therefore, I also think that the future is bright for FLOSS, and it definitely, the partners at All Digital didn't say the last word with this project, and we will try to continue further. And this is also kind of call to all of you, dear participants of the event. Jump on the wagon if you're not on the wagon of the FLOSS community yet. Use the resources we developed in the project, and stay in touch with us one way or another. And thank you, everyone. Take care, stay healthy, be safe, and see you around, hopefully as soon as possible, also in face-to-face activities, not only on Zooms and other digital spaces. Ciao.
Thank you, everyone. Désolé, merci.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you. Gracias. Gracias.
Thank you, everyone.